Oh, I just use it myself, yeah. Okay.
Oh, you're doing the no.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying.
I know. It's in here.
Yeah.
Next year, but I didn't want to do it without.
No.
He could be like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
You were already there. And we didn't know. He changed.
Yeah. So my Mondays, I gotta do better.
And that's what.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
I just for sure. Mr. Rice. I know she asked for that.
Jeff Davis.
John?
Jeff
Yeah.
Davis.
No problem, there's no rest and running.
Just got a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's indigenous, so we're gonna look at a lot of this. Underlying life, so I'll just explore.
I haven't heard that she's not coming. As far as I know. No, but who's gonna be available? Yeah, yeah. I don't. It looks like this one.
I'm glad I have.
Do you notice in the out? Do you notice the difference? That's kind of funny with my hair. My hair. So. Why don't we go with? I was earlier.
Oh, it's like. Well, you know. I think that no, yeah, they might force it. No, I think you.
Yeah, we should just do some. But I some people. Yeah.
But it's so.
Different generations of workers and new ones, all.
You know,
And they need, it's easier for me to. My job.
I find myself.
I read it, did go to. Like getting-
I know, but she, that's. No, I mean, I can do the whole light. And I mean, I don't remember how to do it. Well, this is taking off. Oh, yeah. As we could, so we only did the roll call once. Well, no.
Good afternoon. I think it's a little bit after 1, so we're gonna get started. Thank you. Call the meeting to order, introduce our interpreter and ask you, thank you, there you are.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here with you. Towards the interpretation via Zoom, via computer. After the host activates language interpretation mode, click interpretation. English and Spanish interpretation is available. Click the language that you would like to hear. It's optional to only hear the interpreted language. Click the original audio. If your meeting control tab, in your meeting control tab, it's gonna be located at the bottom right in the mobile phone app and on top right in the tablet app after the host activates language interpretation mode. If the icon is not visible, tap the screen to make it appear. English and Spanish interpretation is available. Here's some reminders, speak slowly, pause between sentences, speak clearly, avoid interrupting or multiple people speaking, avoid using metaphors, acronyms, slangs, or idioms. And interpreter signals during the meeting, speak slower, raise your voice, interrupt for clarification, or communicate a concern. Instrucciones para acceso al intérprete vía Zoom por computadora. Después de que el anfitrión active el modo de interpretación del lenguaje, haga clic en interpretación. Interpretación en inglés y en español está disponible. Haga clic en el idioma que desea escuchar. Es opcional para solo escuchar el idioma que sea interpretado. Haga clic original audio. A interpretación por teléfono o por tableta. En los controles de la reunión oprima More después de que el anfitrión active el modo de interpretación del lenguaje. Por teléfono será localizada en la parte inferior a la derecha de la aplicación. En la tableta está en la parte superior de la derecha de la pantalla. Si esta opción no está visible, toque la pantalla para que aparezca. Un recordatorio: hable despacio, pause entre oraciones, hable con claridad, evite interrumpir o varias personas hablar entre sí, evite usar metáforas, siglas o en doble sentido. Señales del intérprete durante la junta: hable despacio, hace la voz, interrumpir para clarificación o para comunicar algún problema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here again. Okay, we're going to begin with introductions and roll call, which I'd like to combine. So if you can say the district that you're representing, that would be great. We have one new member, Andres, with us today, so we're happy to welcome you. And when we get to you, if you could just say just a couple words about yourself, that would be great. If you don't mind. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, we'll start over here with Jen. Oh, sorry, did I catch you off guard? Sorry.
It's okay. Hi, Jennifer Morrison, District 4, Janice Department.
James Espinosa, District 4, Janice Parvin, also a military veteran representative.
Good afternoon, Sean Pusey, law enforcement representative.
Hello, my name is Andre Barbaro. I was appointed by Supervisor Matt Levier. Not sure which number that is. Number one, thank you. Longtime Ventura County resident, currently residing in Ventura. Professionally, I'm a pediatrician. Specifically, I'm a pediatric hospitalist, which is to say I take care of hospitalized children at Ventura County Medical Center, where I'm the medical director for the Department of Pediatrics. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Michael Rodriguez, I come out of District 5, resident of Oxnard, and Chief Deputy Public Safety.
Please.
Hi, I'm Teresa Cho, I'm the healthcare agency director.
Martha Knudsen with, on behalf of the Office of the County Council.
Good afternoon, Loretta Dennering, behavioral health director.
Cheryl Lightman, I'm the chair of the board and I'm from District 1.
Diane McCam, first vice chair of the board from Area 2.
I'm Janice Gardner, Chair Emerita from District 1. I know I did change. District 3, Supervisor Correll's district.
I'm Nancy Borchard, I'm from District 3, Kelly Long.
Jeff Davis, District 2, Supervisor Girl.
Hi, I'm Liz Warren. I represent Supervisor Lopez in District 5. I'm a consumer advocate and the executive director of the Client Network.
Knowing Monopole District 3, I also will work with Spirit of Santa Paula.
My name is Soledad Barragan y represento el Distrito 5.
Great, thank you. And we do have a quorum, so we will move forward. No members with just cause or no emergency circumstances of, bless you. So moving to the approval of the agenda, that does have to be an action item.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Moved and seconded, and we'll have to do roll call. And since CJ's not here yet, I'm going to ask Janice to please fill in.
Thank you. Soledad Barragan,
Yes. Yes.
Andre Obra,
Present.
Nancy Borchard. Present. David Brookings is absent. Jeffrey Allen Davis,
Yes.
James Espinoza,
Yes.
Genevieve Flores Haro is also absent. Janice Gardner, yes. CJ is, we don't know yet. Supervisor Levere is also absent today. Naomi Marupa,
Yes.
Dan McKay,
Yes.
Jennifer Morrison,
Present.
Sean Pusey.
Yes.
I got her going.
Presently, yes. It's fine. Dahlia Ruffin is also absent. Michael Rodriguez.
yes.
Krista Hague is also absent today, as is Marlon Torres, Liz Warren,
Yes.
and Chair Hyden.
Yes.
Okay, agenda is,
Thank you. Moving on now to the approval of the minutes of October 21st. Yeah,
I move approval of the minutes. Second.
great, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Were there any changes to the minutes? All right, Janice again, roll call please.
Soledad Barragan,
Yes.
Andre, is it Bobrow or Bobrow?
Barbara.
Barbara,
And yes.
Barbara, Andre Barbara. Nancy Borchard,
Yes.
Jeffrey Davis.
Yes.
James Espinoza,
Abstain.
myself, yes. Naomi Marufo,
Abstain.
Diane McKay,
Yes.
Jennifer Morrison,
Yes.
Sean Kesey,
Yes.
Michael Rodriguez,
Yes.
Liz Warren,
Yes.
and Chair Hyder.
Yes. Wow, no longer working, sorry. And yes. That abstain. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 abstentions. We're. Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, now. So. Okay, that passes. Just as a reminder, as long as you read the minutes, you don't have to have been here. So you don't have to abstain as long as you have read the minutes and you feel okay about them or not.
Especially you, Jane.
Yeah, I'm looking right at you, Jim. No kidding.
I volunteered us for a pretty big project.
I'm stubborn, I still abstain.
Yeah, well, don't miss another meeting because you'll volunteer for something else. Okay, moving on to public comments. Do you have any written ones, Jackie? I didn't get anything. No written public comments. Okay, thank you. Anybody in the room? I don't see any. So we're gonna move along. Do we have another chance during the meeting or after the meeting if you still wish to comment on something? Okay, chair announcements. I'm gonna wait, because we're gonna have a lot of discussion on things that I would be bringing up anyway. So I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna pass on that for the moment. But we are moving to the director's report. Dr. Dinner?
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few brief highlights before we get into the rest of the agenda. First, it's been a very long last week or so, week and a half. Our department is very much actively engaged in the mountain fire response. So first and foremost, we want to express our appreciations to our team who work very closely with our first responders and our EMS and OES and all the folks who were out providing support to shelter operations, to our local assistance center, which is still up and running, and just providing support. And so thank you to my staff who quickly assembled. Many of us worked day in and day out, still are. Over the weekends and holidays, supporting the county in the response. And obviously, we want to express our condolences to folks who were impacted by the fires, but it's been a pretty remarkable response from the county, and very proud of what our department is able to do in such a short amount of time. So thank you to our staff led by our safety officer, Michael White, and our direct care staff under the leadership of Sarah Sanchez, our critical care and navigation chief, providing really on-site services in real time. So thank you for that. Next, briefly, just wanted to highlight, we are in the midst of working on our application for the bond BHAB funding that we presented on several times in the last couple of months. Our application will be ready ahead of the submission date for December, mid-December. Again, that's for the MHRC on Lewis Road, and then the PUF and CSU out in East County. Again, the CSU work is well underway. We anticipate that opening in hopefully the fall of next year. That is not contingent upon the bond BHAB funding that has been funded with other funds, but the PUF will be in the application along with the Lewis Road rain project. And then lastly, just wanted to highlight, it's in your packet, the public comment period for the digital policy manual for the behavioral health transformation under Proposition 1. That is usually with DHCS the Department of Healthcare Services puts out major change initiatives They typically do them in the form of behavioral health info notices, BHINs. Given the breadth of Proposition 1, and because it's going to be a multi-year rollout starting now, they decided to do policy manuals, three versions of, or three modules of a larger digital policy manual to guide counties on how to roll out the various initiatives. So the first piece was released last week for a 30-day public comment period. We've included in the packet the highlights and the links to the website. Again, this is something that when the state releases something of this magnitude, they have to open it up for public comment. So take a look. We had a 2-hour webinar with one of the executive leaders at DHCS just on Friday, the behavioral health directors and select staff to walk through the policy manual. It's about 96 pages. This is just the first round of it. We were being told that as more pieces get released, there'll be more specific on kind of that how to and what the expectations would be for counties moving forward. Again, that second round is due to be released to counties in mid-December. And so as more information is released, we will always obviously be bringing that back to the BHAB as part of our regular top 1 announcements. Again, that 18-month transition period from MHSA to BHSA officially launches in January. So January 2025. And then our integrated plan needs to be approved by our board by June 30th of 2026. And then we go live with Prop 1 July 1 of 2026. So those are the timelines there. And with that, I can take any questions.
Liz?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Just a quick question. The bonds, the BHAB funding solution, what is the bond for MHRC and what is the bond for the CSU? What are we talking, what kind of money?
So the bond BHAB is that is what the Proposition 1 that was approved, the AB 531. Our ask is up to 250 million. So that is what we went to the board. I went to the board with CEO last board meeting to get approval for the application. Our request would be up to 250 million.
For all three?
For the 2 applications. The East County CSU is not being funded using the bond BHAB.
Okay,
dollars.
so for the PUF and for MHRC,
Yes.
how much specifically for the MHRC?
So that is, we're still in process of working that out in the application. Once it's submission, once it's finalized and submitted, I'll have the exact figure.
Do we know what the bottom line is for the PUF?
Same, we're still working on the figures.
Okay, and when does it have to all be submitted by?
December 13th, I believe.
Okay, and then could you just slowly repeat the timeline? I couldn't get all the dates that you were talking about when things, like, I know that starting February of 2025, we start the 18 months, is it February or January? January, okay, but could you just repeat the timeline a little slower for me? Thank you.
So although all of our work has begun basically since Prop 1 passed in March, the official 18-month transition period, according to the state, is January 2025. That is when we start the integrated planning process. And that has to be done, and our integrated plan needs to be approved by our board of supervisors by June 30th, 2026. And then Prop 1 implementation begins July 1st, 2026, with the approved 3-year plan or integrated plan.
And is the integrated plan a 3-year plan?
Yes, but they're not calling it a 3-year plan anymore. It's called an integrated plan.
Okay, and is that on top of existing 3-year strategic plans we have? This is separate country.
This is new. Yes.
Okay,
this
thank
is
you.
a new plan.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
It obviously seems like a lot, so is it, I mean, compared to other sweeping changes like this is fast as it
This
is.
is as big and as fast as it gets.
Okay,
Because any one piece of what's included in Proposition 1 would typically be a 3 to 5 year implementation on its own. We're being asked to basically implement this entire suite of packages, including SB 43 and CARE Act, which are not included in Proposition 1, all in the next year and a half.
wow, Okay, does it, and I know we'll get more information, but does it seem as, hard on the youth services as it feels like right now? From funding, can you, it seems like that they're, in order to fund a lot of the, more beds, just for those who severely need them, that there's gonna be some takeaways, there has to be, from youth services or tag services.
So as we discussed in our presentation back in August, I believe, yes, there will be some shifts because of the new funding allocations, specifically on shifting funds that were typically for core services out of core services into a housing component and dedicated FSP, which means funding will be shifted from what is now PEI, prevention and early intervention, into a new newly formed early intervention category. And the prevention funds are being routed to State Department of Public Health. We don't know, we still don't know what that's gonna look like. We do not know if the funds will be routed locally. Decisions still have not been made at the state level. So there will be some tough decisions that will have to be made. Again, the integrated planning process, which if you go on the website, that has the link to the VHT public comment period, you'll see all of the stakeholders that need to be involved now. It's very different than our current model. And so there are gonna be a lot of folks at the table who are gonna want, you know, their stake in it. So there will be a lot to consider this time around, as opposed to how we existed under MHSA.
Thank you, Really just wanted to hear you say that out loud because.
Thank you, Dr. Dennery. Do we know how much of the MHSA, now VHSA dollars are going to be moved into public health?
We know that they will be taking, the state will be taking an additional 5% allocation from the top, from counties. So currently, out of our 100% that we've received, 5% goes to state-funded administrative efforts. They will take an additional 5% off for prevention. So we will be retaining 90% of our allocation. So that will vary obviously from county to county, depending on what their MHSA allocation is.
And when will we know what the dollar amount would be?
Well, it just kind of depends. All we can really go off of right now are estimates, like what I've shown in previous presentations where we look at our 3-year average, because MHSA is a very volatile funding source, so we do not know from year to year exactly how much we're gonna get. So we just go off of estimates. So it can range anywhere between $200 and $250 million a year, depending on if there are bumps, depending on how the economy goes. And so you can extrapolate and approximate like how much we anticipate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always so uplifting. Yeah, it's good for us to get all that feedback, really, to understand and to keep that in mind as we set our goals for the year. So, welcome, CJ. You're here, good. Okay, today we have a presentation on the CARE Act, and Dr. Sugar's gonna do that, and I think that we do have a guest also. Marty, you want to introduce him since he's working with you?
Absolutely. Joining us today right behind me, or actually behind Dr. Dennery, is Justice Skillner. And Justice has just joined our office, the county counsel's office, moving over from the district attorney's office. And he will be conducting the actual CARE hearings as those get going, basically in January when it first starting to have hearings.
Thanks, Marty. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Sugar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for asking about the CARE Act. Relish every opportunity we have to talk about the CARE Act. I want to offer a little qualifier. So this is going to be a fairly high level overview. But not to worry, if you're interested in the details, The details are out there. You need only go and Google CARE Act and you will be treated to a wide array of details. So, just bear that in mind because we have a time limit to it. So, go to the next slide. Give just an idea about the hard work that's been going on. I checked just before I got up here when my first CARE Act meeting was. Looks like it was August of 2023. So we've been talking about a long time. Even though Ventura County is cohort 2, so there are a group of counties that went first, and we're in that second cohort. We were set to go live December 1st. And in advance of that, all of these meetings have been happening at various levels. So at the highest level, Dr. Bennering sits on the executive committee with other leads of the various agencies you see there, and have been guiding the process from on high. Getting a little bit lower, you got the steering committee, and really the work groups where the bulk of the work and the fleshing out has done. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, at least for our department, our strategic planning group, Sean Crease Rivera and Cole Salazar have been sort of really central to the process. Operationally, we've got Dr. Taylor and Lavana Adato, who's the clinic administrator over the current ASSIST program, and will be the clinic administrator over the CARE Act program. And then Marty Knudsen. We used to have a public defender, Marty Walter, and she was county council for a bit. So it confused me. But Marty Knudsen has been central to the effort, really was running the show at the mock trial from what I hear. I wasn't able to go to the mock trial, but by all indications, had a guiding hand. We're very fortunate to have Judge Guasco having been assigned to the CARE Act court. He had some experience with the ASSIST program, is a very sensitive and understanding judge when it comes to such matters, so we're in good hands there. And he was able to participate in the mock trial as well. And then internally, we continue that last column is all of our internal, reflects the effort just behavioral health we're making. And frankly, each of the department, public defender and the courts have all done lots of work independent that they bring to the steering committee and the work group. So it's been a tremendous effort, and I can tell you confidently we're going to be ready for December 1st. We'll see if we get any referrals. We don't know how long we're going to wait for referral, but we're ready for that. So I'll go to the next slide, Jackie. And not as a cop out, but because the additional council has done such a good job summarizing the CARE Act in about 5 minutes. There's this video we're just going to screen, and give you the broad overview as well.
Turn that off. Recovery and Empowerment Act. The CARE Act. The CARE Act stands for the Community Assistance, Recovery, and Empowerment Act. The CARE Act creates a new pathway to deliver mental health treatment and support services to the most severely impacted Californians who often experience homelessness or incarceration without treatment. This pathway is accessed when a person, called the petitioner, requests court-ordered treatment, services, support, and housing resources under the CARE Act for another person called the respondent. You may be wondering, who is eligible? For a person to be eligible for services under the CARE Act, they must meet 7 eligibility criteria. In this video, we will walk through the 7 criteria that must be met for a person to receive CARE Act services. We will also provide an example for each one. Please note, the examples provided in this video are only circumstances that may qualify. All determinations of eligibility will be made by the court and are case specific. Number 1, the person must be 18 years old or older. That means the person must be an adult. Number 2, the person must have a diagnosis of schizophrenia spectrum or another psychotic disorder. That means that people with other serious mental illnesses, like bipolar disorder or major depression, don't qualify, unless they also have an eligible diagnosis. For example, eligible diagnoses include, but are not limited to, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, or schizophreniform disorder. Number 3, the person must be currently experiencing a mental illness that is severe in degree and persistent in duration, may cause behavioral functioning that substantially interferes with the activities of daily living, and may lead to an inability to maintain independent functioning without treatment, support, and rehabilitation for a long or indefinite period. That means the illness is serious, may last a long time, and may cause significant problems in the person's life. For example, the person is having trouble with basic activities related to personal care due to a long-lasting mental illness, which could lead to their inability to care for themselves without assistance. Number 4, the person is not currently clinically stabilized in an ongoing voluntary treatment program. That means that the person is not already in a voluntary program that is working for them. For example, the person may be refusing voluntary treatment or have temporarily accepted voluntary treatment, but failed to continue treatment without reason. Number 5, at least one of the following must be true. Either the person is unlikely to survive safely in a community without supervision and their condition is substantially deteriorating. That means that the person's mental health condition is getting worse, and there is a good chance that they will be unable to live safely in the community without someone watching over them. For example, the person has recently been frequently hospitalized due to symptoms such as delusions or impaired judgment. Or the person is in need of services and supports in order to prevent a relapse or decline in health that would likely result in grave disability or serious harm to themselves or others. That means that if the person doesn't get additional services and supports, there is a good chance that they will meet the criteria for psychiatric hospitalization. For example, the person has access to safe housing, but because of their mental illness, chooses to live in unsafe conditions. Number 6, the person's participation in CARE Act proceedings must be the least restrictive alternative to ensure the person's recovery and stability. That means that there are no less restrictive options that would also help the person enough to make them stable. For example, care may be necessary because other less restrictive alternatives have not been successful. And lastly, number 7, the person's participation in a care plan or care agreement must be likely to benefit them. That means that there is a good chance that going through CARE Act proceedings will be good for the person. For example, the person was improving when participating in treatment programs that are similar to ones that they are likely to receive through CARE. We have now gone through all 7 eligibility criteria, which will be considered by the court and must be met in order for someone to be eligible for services under the CARE Act. These criteria are also included on the petition to commence CARE Act proceedings, which is Form CARE 100 and is necessary to begin a CARE Act case. In addition, Form CARE 50 info provides more examples and information on eligibility. For CARE Act forms, information, and other resources, head to the California Courts website.
For help. There, we're quick on the trigger, I guess. Apologies, everyone. All right, so just to sort of recap a little bit in legal parlance, what for us is the client is in legal terms is the respondent, it's the person of concern, the person who appears to need treatment. Petitioner is the one who initiates the action, and in our case, it's anticipated to be family members. But honestly, when I think about it, I'm expecting the court, criminal court, especially when it comes to misdemeanors who have been found incompetent to stand trial. It's actually a part of the statute that the judge refers to for consideration for care. So the petitioner is the one who initiates the action. And I just wanted to add that while, you know, chronic homelessness and substance use and incarceration are likely going to be associated or contributing factors, by themselves are not sufficient to qualify or to meet the criteria. The criteria, I'm not necessarily going to restate it, but I might put it in contrast, because I know a lot of folks here are familiar with the assisted outpatient treatment program. We obviously operate an assisted outpatient treatment program here in Ventura County. We've done so for 4 or 5 years. You might note a lot of the same criteria are in play. There are actually 9 criteria for assist, and there's 7 criteria here. So in some ways, care would seem a little bit easier to qualify for. However, the constraints that are drawn around the diagnosis, so the schizophrenia form or schizophrenia spectrum diagnosis is much more constrained than what exists with assisted outpatient treatment. So it's kind of a mix. In some ways, it's less criteria. In other ways, the criteria is a little bit more narrow, at least when it comes to diagnoses. Next slide, please. So the rights of the respondents right to be involved in the informed and involved in the proceedings. And of note here, no proceedings are going to be held in absentia. This is another contrast to assisted outpatient treatment. There are people who are admitted to assisted outpatient treatment without ever appearing in court. That will not be the case with the CARE Act program. And it is anticipated, at least in some instances, to be probably a limiting factor. So if we can't actually get the person to court, it'll essentially sort of bring an end to the proceedings. We appointed a public defender to represent them, or they can choose to, if they have the ability to do so, hire their own private attorney. You can also have, this is unique to the CARE Act, have a supporter. So that's somebody who presumably a trusted sort of advocate who will they elect to have assist them. And then when it comes to the family participation, they can choose to have their family participate without necessarily making the matter public. Next slide, Jackie. And then the process, this is a very cursory overview of the process. But basically it all begins with a petition. And that's where the petitioner, whether it's a family member or administrator of a hospital or police, in order to initiate the process, the petitioner in every instance is expected to essentially complete that Form 100 that you saw referenced in the video. The court's going to make an initial ruling, the facial ruling as to whether or not it appears as though the person meets criteria. And if so, then they get referred to behavioral health. And in that first court appearance, it's actually the director of behavioral health that then gets named in place of the petitioner. And then at that point, there's a collective effort, and that is expected to include the public defender, behavioral health, if there's a supporter involved, to essentially try and make a connection with the respondent or the client. Begin to talk to them about the services and the supports, all part of an effort to engage them voluntarily in treatment. Everyone's agreed, public defenders through the rest of us, including the judge. The first choice is to get the person to agree to participate voluntarily. And it's anticipated that will happen a majority of the time. It's similar to assist. We get a lot of voluntary participation. But if it's not possible, well, I should say this, when it is voluntary, then it's a care agreement as opposed to a care plan. So if we can't gain the person's agreement, and if they continue to meet criteria, then work on what can become a court-ordered care plan is initiated. And because it's a court process, there are periodic status hearings, so we come back to court and advise the court, let them know how things are proceeding. And in its normal course, that takes a year. There's a possibility for an additional year to be added, so it could be as long as a 2-year process. Next slide, check. These are just a few resources that you can access, like I mentioned before. Lots of information about CARE Act out there. Actually, the first one that was put together by our court partner features a link to the video, so if you wanted to see the video again or miss something in the video, that's one way you can access it. So I am going to, so I have yield for question, 5 minutes for questions, how about that?
And that's fine, and if you need a couple more minutes,
Okay.
we're good with that, so. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Schiffer.
Hello?
You mentioned a supporter, that they could have on their behalf. Is that a court appointed supporter? Is that a physician? Or is that someone they need to bring in?
That would be somebody of their choosing, not a professional person, but somebody that they are basically hopefully feeling trusting of and could assist them in understanding, navigating the process.
Other questions? Liz?
Hi, thank you, Dr. Schiffer. So a couple of things. When you were running mock trials, you said, were you doing both with this scenario of someone receiving a care agreement as well as someone receiving a court-ordered care plan? And what were some of the things that you saw that you had to, that were challenges or hurdles that might be difficult for the individual going through this process?
I want to yield to my 2 legal partners who are here and participating, and I don't know, Marty, you were starting to sit on that, turn on your microphone.
So good question. First of all, I think, we would acknowledge that we were really in Judge Glasgow's debt. Because he took this whole mock trial thing very seriously and gave us an enormous amount of time to literally sit down in the courtroom where we will be here conducting these proceedings, which will be, what's called the ceremonial courtroom. And if you've ever walked into this place, it has a lot of people in robes in pictures on either side. And it has a very high judge's bench that's very large because it's intended to sometimes have multiple judges up there. And the first thing that Judge Glasgow did was to literally take himself off the bench and put him on the floor, put himself on the floor with where you would usually see the 2 counsel tables. So it's counsel table, judge's table, counsel table, and the witnesses, if we get to witnesses in a particular hearing, will be there. We talked through a large number of issues while we were sitting there. And then we mock trialed the first couple of hearings. So we did not actually have a negotiation over a care agreement. And we did not have the hearing on the record that would be required for a care plan. Partly because we'd already spent almost 2 hours by that point. And our Judge Wasco had other things to complete that day. But also because it'll be several months before we get past the stages that we mock trial already. So hopefully, if we need to, the types of hearings that we're gonna be doing, Michael can say if he agrees with me, they're not as complicated as long multi-day jury trials and things like this. So the actual taking of the evidence, if we get to that stage in a particular case, that part is something we do all the time as lawyers and judges. But we were thinking more about these first initial couple of proceedings. What's it gonna be like when we actually had someone playing the respondent, we had someone playing the petitioner, and the respondent ultimately ended up deciding to make his mother the petitioner after she was then subbed in, we subbed in BCBH as the petitioner. Mom then became the supporter. So we went through all of these roles, if that's helpful to you. So
Yeah,
we're
it is helpful.
Yeah, we were literally going step by step by step, and how can we make this as little intimidating as possible in a room filled with at least 30 pictures of people in black robes.
Right, I mean, we already deal with white coat syndrome, we don't need black robe syndrome. Yeah, so, yes. So, what are the contingencies that are gonna be put in place for folks that are responding that don't have supporters or family members? Will there be a peer support specialist with lived experience in the court system available to support them through that process?
There isn't a position like that at the moment. And what we have done is we've tried to learn from other courts that have already gone through this process. And we're continuing to. I think we have 2 different things that we're gonna sit in on this week with the San Diego court. Yeah. And so the other courts that have been through this and setting this all up in the other counties, there are about 7 of them. And they've all been extraordinarily generous in sharing their experiences with all the rest of us. Still, I would say that, it's kind of like every county receives a written description of how something should be. And then has to build it within their county. And they don't look, but it still doesn't look exactly the same in each place, which doesn't mean any of them are wrong. It's just a question of trying to figure out how to work it best in your county.
Okay, so we're waiting to see what you learned by sitting in San Diego. San Diego's extraordinarily progressive when it comes to working with your support specialists in your system. So hopefully you'll see a representation of that. But if you don't, I still think it should be on the table and something to be seriously considered. And I know we have existing FTE peer support specialists in the county, but I don't think we have anybody that's extra available. So there might be a decision discussed to possibly create one for this. But I think this is extraordinarily important. And though the petitioner can be a family member, many petitioners will not be family members. And many clients do not have relationships with family members. They are estranged. So I can't stress this enough how important it is that they have the support going through this extraordinarily stressful process. So please take all that with the seriousness with which I'm bringing that to the table. The other thing I wanted to find out, Dr. Shipper, is the VCBH Implementation Committee. I see that on the bottom, it says patient's right client advocate. Did you have anybody with lived experience participate in this stakeholder process?
We have some staff that would experience it. We have some staff with lived experience who can handle the process, but not a stakeholder per se.
Okay, so I guess I would just once again, want to go on the record that this is where you would want to reach out to stakeholders in the community and invite somebody into that process, especially someone who's willing to bring their lived experience of dealing with care court or diversion court or probation or whatever. But there are folks in the county that have that experience that could definitely enlighten and I think bring a fuller picture to what is going to be happening. Because this is a huge change, a huge switch up that I know everyone is looking forward to and seeing get up and running, but for clients, it's extraordinarily frightening and scary. And as much support we can give individuals in our community going through this process, the better it's going to be over the better one. Thank you.
And if I may, and this is one of the reasons why we did the mock trial with Judge Guasco, County Council, Public Defender's Office, is because we want to devise a way to make this as welcoming and inviting as possible for folks who are experiencing serious mental illness. And, you know, one of the things that we did, you know, Judge Guasco asked us, is this going to be okay? Me being this close to council table? Because if this is, say, respondents council table, he said it right here, facing us, as opposed to across, it's a large courtroom. And so what we wanted to make sure, and this is working with the other counties, is that we made it, to make it as welcoming and inviting as possible. The other thing to keep in mind is that these are also confidential proceedings, so the public cannot attend these.
Right.
And I agree with. And then the other thing is that in cohort 1 in the first year, and I included LA County in cohort 1, even though technically they started, but there's been about 700 petitions filed throughout the state. And so those are counties such as Los Angeles, which has over 10 million residents, Orange County, San Diego County, Riverside County, San Francisco County. And so, you know, we don't know what the numbers are. By all accounts, though, what people are saying is that quantitatively, don't expect large numbers. Qualitatively, though, there's going to be a heavy lift on client engagement. And so we're hopeful that this is an opportunity to get folks treatment and services that are appropriate to their individual needs. And, you know, we'll know when we know, essentially.
Right, I'm aware these are private proceedings, but if a client gives you a release and they identify their supporter, the supporters allow us to be with them and be by their side.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shipper.
Regarding the first criteria eligibility, the 18 and over, are there exceptions for emancipated minors?
Not as far as I saw in the statute, right, the statute says 18 and over.
It says adult. CJ.
I thank you, Dr. Shipper. There's the several criteria. Do they have to meet every item or is there a possibility of some and not others?
Not they meet all the criteria.
Okay. Yeah. I'd just like to reiterate what Liz spoke about in terms of a peer support specialist. A person that has a lived experience and has lived through it and has come up for the best, that would be a huge encouragement to someone that's in this process. So I would just encourage you to make sure that that position is created if it isn't already. Okay, can you remind us again of the funding source? That's what I thought. I just want to make sure about that.
There is no funding.
No additional staff have been provided by, so it comes from that grant.
Yeah, so I will just say there were, in 2022, the state did release some planning funds to counties. And the planning funds, the methodology really centered around homelessness numbers. And so that's how they just kind of came up with the number. So as a county, we did receive just under about $300,000 for planning dollars. But when it comes to ongoing funding for staffing, programmatics, absolutely not. There's no funding.
Yeah, go ahead.
Along those lines, then how many staff, Dr. Shipper or Dr. Jenner, will be involved in care?
So the plan is, since the two are so similar, and certainly the level of care and the outreach engagement is so similar, we're going to launch, basically kind of piggyback with the assist program. And, there's a behavioral clinician that's going to, really the bulk of the work is anticipated in being, a follow-up to the petitions. Because when behavioral is named the petitioner, then it's incumbent upon us to essentially do an assessment and determine whether or not they meet the criteria. And I don't know if there's a hard number from the other counties, but the vast majority of petitions are not found to meet the prima facie. And so again, that's where the bulk of the work is. And then the follow-up work would anticipate it would be divided between two of the existing mental health associates.
Yeah, so in talking about, lessons learned from cohort 1 counties, obviously when this first launched, no one really knew what to expect. So different counties took different approaches. Some counties went and, hired on teams and armies of staff, like direct care clinical staff, which, as we stated, there's been only 700 petitions statewide. So now they're like, what do we do with these staff? Because we're not using them in the way we thought. So many of us in the cohort 2 are taking the wait and see approach, basically using existing staff. And then if it warrants additional staff, figuring out how to pull and fund.
Just a quick question, what level is the clinician attached to the program?
So BHC4,
I'm sorry?
the BHC4, behavioral clinician 4.
Okay, so they're like an LCSW or they're
Either a licensed marriage family therapist or a licensed clinical social worker.
okay, thank you.
So as part of this, if a person is homeless and they're deemed eligible for this program, is somebody working on trying to get them homeless? Is that part of this? Would that be part of the treatment or part of the plan?
Yeah, that'd be part of it. In fact, some of that's anticipated and so the capability of doing court virtually is also in play. So actually bringing court to folks who may be homeless, otherwise unable or unwilling to make the trek to the government center. So yeah, homelessness and housing is a primary function of it.
And just on that note, as part of the BHBH, Behavioral Health Bridge Housing Grant that we've received, care, court participants receive prioritization, so they will, move up the list as far as priority for housing under BHBH.
And if someone is referred and they're not accepted, they don't meet all the criteria, what happens to that person?
We anticipate. What we intend, and again, this is not uncommon in the existing assist program. And so, people who don't meet criteria for that program would be a referral to our RISE program, and either become the subject of outreach and engagement. Similarly, in the sense of trying to engage them and bring them into services.
And I can tell you from a public defender perspective, is we're looking at this, is that if they don't meet criteria, it's an opportunity to engage, find appropriate level of services. And so, you know, we don't want it to like, you know, okay, don't fall back. Next, it's like, no, we've made contact with someone who's in need of some kind of services. Or maybe they just need to re-engage in services. Their things need to be revised slightly. But we're looking at this as an opportunity since we have contact with someone.
Okay, I have one more question. I'm sorry, did you want to? Marty,
So yes, so this is a good example of our mock trial thing. One of the things that we settled out in the hallway before we got started was if these petitions go first to the court, they're reviewed by the court, and many of them will be dismissed without either the PD or BCBH ever hearing or seeing those petitions. And we didn't want those people to get lost. And so what we've set up in the hallway, we'll make sure it happens, is that a petition that is denied, they will also automatically get information about the existing program and how to refer the person who's in the petition to the assist program.
So that would go more to their support person, with them, like.
It would go to whoever is filed the petition in the first place.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, that's, we're just trying, okay. So let's just say as an example, the police pick up someone who is clearly schizophrenic, actively hallucinating on the street, is gravely disabled, meets that criteria. So they're taken first to BCMC or wherever they're taken, I would assume, for some kind of assessment. How does this interplay with that? Then what happens to that person? If they're hospitalized for a short time, if they have a 5150, which is not very long.
So if they meet the criteria for a 5150, then they would be brought to any emergency department in the county. And then they would be processed as a 5150 patient. If that's what the police's chosen path and their assessment in the 5150. This would be a whole separate thing. So say somebody, comes in on a 5150 and for whatever reason is released back to the police. And the police now have them in jail and want to file a petition, they can. Or even if they don't still have hands on, that they've repeatedly seen this person, they can put together a petition and file it. I guess they would come to our office for advice on how to fill out that petition, because we have counsel in our office who work with the sheriff's office, for example. I guess we probably get questions from local police departments as well. One of the things that but just one of the things that we were looking at is we're trying to put all of this together. Actually, it sounds like it isn't quick, but it really has been in many ways. So we're pretty sure we have the first couple months worked out. And then what we want to do is then start cultivating sources of petitions, if you will. In other words, making sure that the sheriff's office, making sure that EMS, making sure that those folks know what would be an appropriate petition for filing. And so beginning to work on other sources.
Yeah, and I just want to say, it's important to understand that if someone is admitted to an ER under 5150, it doesn't mean that they're going to be eligible to go into this program. They just may be having a difficult time, experiencing a crisis, but they're housed and have family, they have food, they're able to go back, get connected to services that they already are not, and then start their journey. But So just because someone is 5150 doesn't mean they automatically they shouldn't automatically become a respondent to a petition for care for it.
That's absolutely correct.
And some of the cohort one counties have used Care Court or Care Act agreements as a step down from LPS conservatorships. And so, you know, that's months down the line for us, but we're looking at everything.
I was just gonna say, one of the referral sources we anticipate is actually the discharge plan to Belmont. So the referral coming out of the hospital, because of the different criteria, I mean, you can cease to meet criteria for great disability, and still meet criteria for care.
I like that. That makes me feel better. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Or comments? Right, well, this is an ongoing, obviously, and we appreciate your presentation and learning more about it, and I know you'll be back, I'm sure, to kind of update us at different times, and as we establish our goals, this might become part of one of them, so, but I think you all appreciate learning more about this, 'cause it's eminent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now the board member comments, and announcements, are there any? Yes, thanks.
I'll break the seal on that. First of all, I want to thank the translator back there. Usually we have two back there, right? He's doing this all on his own today. Thank you. You need a break, let us know. Also, I'd like to thank Sean and Janice Snyder that they kept veterans on the table in my absence last month. The irony of my absence was that I was out of state for my son's graduation from basic training, so otherwise would have been here. So I want to thank you for that, but and I also do see what I was volunteered for. But just I'd like to put it on the record, and I'd like to know what that entails, and then hopefully we'll talk offline sometime.
Yeah,
And get some more
it's already late, but they know.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Janice.
I was wondering, I wanted to ask Dr. Jennering and Marty, about a timeline, if you had a timeline, vis-a-vis the bylaws that were submitted. A timeline of returning them back to us so we can bring them to the full board.
Not at this time. I have conversations to have with the chair that are still pending.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all right. Move on to old business, data notebook. This is James, data notebook status update.
Now James knows that he's doing that with me. We need to get 2 questions answered and in like ASAP. They were actually due the 15th. And then we've asked for an extension. There were some issues with it so that it won't, right now we can go in, answer those 2 questions, and it doesn't stop us from going back in again. But it's data that we need to get from the county is sort of, you know, basically on homelessness and as it relates to mental health. So I will catch you up. And we will get those 2 questions in. They're not huge, they're just some answers we need. We'll get those 2 questions in and then give it to you, David, when you and I think we can get the rest of them done.
Sounds good. On that note, I have no update.
What you missed was we voted to actually, as part of the responsibilities of the first vice chair and the second vice chair, to make it their responsibility every year to do the data notebook. And that way we kind of know it's going to be taken care of and somebody knows who they're responsible for it from now on. And the information to us doesn't always come in a timely manner either. So it's can be kind of a short, narrow timeline, but I think we're at the top of it, as you're saying. It'll happen.
Sounds good.
Okay, anything else on that? Okay, now we're moving to new business. As you know, last month, we had a goal-setting meeting, which I was so excited and happy about the participation. It was just fantastic. Everyone was very engaged. We had a really good full board of people who were here, and I think lots of input. And The idea then was to go through all the different ideas, and there were many that were, and all good, that were put up on the papers that we did, and everybody voted on different items. And so what we have, basically, what I have included in your packet, it may have been a little confusing because it probably wasn't well explained. But basically, the BHAB goals that are in the packet, as you'll see, there were two basic overriding issues that came out as in the primary interests of our board. The first was justice issues, and that included several different things, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the second was children and TASE services. And, but under that category, the TASE services was by far had the most votes. So I included it as children and TASE services because there may be some overlap, but definitely the TASE services looks like was probably gonna be one of our goals. But I wanna give the chance to board members before we move forward with this to kind of talk about anything they didn't understand about the goals and how, you know, we just noting, kind of trying to summarize what went on and any other comments they wanna make and the other input they wanna make. So I'll open it up to the board. Anybody has any other questions, comments, whatever? Liz?
Yeah, mine. So I would just caution you from combining children and TASE services. They're really different. They're a different population with different needs, really significant different needs. So, you know, an adolescent and a 22-year-old, it's very different. So I would separate them out.
Yeah, I think that is the idea. But I did list the kind of the different ways that people were interested in looking at children's services, and just thinking if we decide to take services we're gonna narrow it down to that, make that our goal for the year. Then we want to make sure that we look at all these different providers, et cetera, to see how they do interact with our TASE services, and that's kind of what the idea of that was. But you're absolutely right, I agree. Other comments, questions? Yeah, Jennifer?
Sure, I thought this exercise that we did was really important, and I'd like to see us do that every year. I feel like it's more structured, it'll give us an outline to deal with and specific topics to deal with, so I thank you for arranging that.
Yeah, that's a very good lead in, thank you, and that is the idea that we will establish however many we want, goals for the year, which shouldn't be more than 3, obviously. And work on those in our committee structure. There'll be ad hoc committees, or sometimes people call them working committees, so that we can do them more efficiently and have very specific goals for the committee. So the idea is these committees would establish the specifics of what they want to work on to meet a specific goal. And then how they want to go about doing that. And at the end, it will be presented back from the committee to the full board. And we will then talk about it, and hopefully that will lead to a paper or some kind of presentation that will go forward as recommendation. And also just kind of things that have been discovered under this process about this particular issue, go forward to not only the board, our behavioral health department, but also the board of supervisors. So the idea is that we are gonna bring a product that's going to be hopefully beneficial to the county, the whole county, including the behavioral health board, but as well as the board of supervisors. Liz?
Yeah, so you've listed up, there are a whole bunch of bullet points under item 2. And I think that in order for this to be a rather, like we could streamline this process, we would want to find out what the actual gaps are. People are kind of like they're just throwing stuff like darts at a dartboard saying, I believe there's a gap here, and we have all these categories. So I think we want to get some kind of result from a needs assessment, either the previous one or there's one ongoing, but until we have some data in front of us that shows us what within these areas is actually lacking, an actual, you know, hardcore gap, I'm not sure how this is going to become fruitful. I think we need an additional data set in order to identify these areas that have the largest gaps in services.
Okay, and what I also I forgot to mention is I think with all of these, because people were really interested in how Prop 1 was going to be affecting whatever goals we choose. And certainly that has to be a part of this, because we don't know what the funding is going to be affected per se. I mean, we got a little bit of insight, but this is gonna be an ongoing process that we have to also incorporate, I think, in our goals. In addition, we want to make sure that we're engaged in the community. That was also brought up by several people at the last meeting to make sure that we're doing a lot of reaching out. Reaching out. Outreach, thank you. Great. So that we know that we are including the community in the goal setting, et cetera, and in what we're finding. So I think the idea is, as we go through this, we want to be looking, and you're right, but what are the gaps? And what are the strengths, and what's the department able to do, and CBOs able to do, and the school district able to do to fill all this in, to get sort of a more complete picture. But if we wait for a needs assessment to be the background of this, I don't know that we're gonna really accomplish as much as we can. But any more feedback?
Well, then I would just say, maybe you put child and teen services on hold till you do get that data set, because you need that. So you can make some informed decisions around, program and policy suggestions. Maybe we focus on the justice involved adults, children issue. We take that on. I think this late in the calendar year, you're giving yourselves literally from January to May, because we wrap up the fiscal year in June, you're giving yourself maybe 5 months, 6 months to get something kind of looked at, researched, some kind of report written. So maybe we don't need to do 1 or 2 or 3, maybe we just find one right now that speaks to a majority of us. And we wait to get the data set for the gap of services regarding children and chase services.
I guess I just, to take the item that had by far the greatest interest, which is the children, youth wellness and TAG, and set it aside. If it takes this year and next year, because it is such a big area, that to me seems a wiser use than just taking the thing that most people were interested in as their #1 goal and say, we're gonna not do that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but again, I just want to make it clear, you're gonna set up working committees or work groups. They're going to have no jumping off point with an identified gap in service. They're gonna have nowhere to start. They're gonna be doing things that are not, that are kind of low information, ill-informed. So I don't know how you create, intellectually honest policy or program recommendations if you don't know exactly what gap you're looking at. This is a lot of people feel this way. They've had personal anecdotal experiences. There's some lived experience. There's a way to fill in what some of us around this table may bring to this process, but you really want hard data when you're looking at things like this. So I understand that this is what the board came back and said, we're focused on it. We want to pay attention to this particular area, but I just would caution you before you start doing all of these things that you're putting yourself behind an 8 ball. That's just based on my experience having done this for a period of time. If you don't have the data set, I don't know what you're working from, except perception. That's not reality. Though unfortunately sometimes it is. That's not what we do. Yeah.
Other feedback? Yeah, Nancy. I wonder if under the children's services, we have heard at this board continuously about the autism developmental disability issue and qualifying for behavioral health services or not, mostly not, and how troubling and difficult that is for families. Maybe that's probably one of the things that we have been presented with, and we are looking for public input, and that's been presented to us a lot of times. So I wonder if we could, it seemed like we could start there. And regional center, those two things go together. CBOs is another thing that there are different CBOs that do services for children. We can look at those. There's a number. I can't tell you right now how many, but we could choose. So maybe the one that gets the most money and see what's going on there. Yes.
I agree that we should separate children and J though, because we're talking about CBOs, completely different and areas pretty different funding streams, from pretty different, ages and so on and so forth, so, I think we should separate those, I agree with that, whoever made that comment, and, yeah, I think that we have enough to work, I understand where Liz is coming from as far as the data and, the gaps where they would be, but I think that there are things on here that we could work on. I believe there are things like what Nancy just mentioned, and, you know, we do have access to a lot of Tay youth already. Yeah, you know, there's specific clinics, Tay Tunnel, we've had Tay members, attend the Tay committee when that was running, and, you know, we do have access to a lot of the Tay youth, so, and a lot of them are, you know, just being housed, or, you know, they're being looked at. There is a lot of gaps that I know that are prevalent with the Tay youth as we speak. And a lot of the, you know, a lot of things are being taken care of as well through the county, but I think that we have enough Tay youth that we can talk to them and see what they think as well. So that's just my opinion.
A little late to the game as I was not present last meeting to vote on some of these priorities, but I do think it's also notable that some of us have decades of experience working with some of these agencies and have resources that we can go to, and so as part of the looking for data, looking for concrete sort of like initiatives of we could move rather quickly with some of these aspects, I think.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other feedback? Can I call by you, Dr. Cho, just, I hope it's okay if I ask you, on the gap analysis that I know you're currently still working on, how much of that involves the Tay specific population?
Yeah, I don't know that I would know the answer to that because we're just in the very beginning stages of it. I do have our Deputy Director of Healthcare Agency, John Polich, who will be helping me to put the assessment forward and work with HMA together. It's helpful for me to hear this though, but as we kind of go into our beginning steps of that assessment, because it helps me understand sort of what the board feels is important with respect to that as a priority. So certainly can look at that and come back to the board with more of a specific report on it.
Yeah. Great, well, I think that's the idea is, I guess I'm gonna take a little bit of issue with you, Liz, because to me, the whole idea is for us to identify. Thanks. For us to identify really where the gaps are and what we see in the community of what the services that are missing that could be there, what would be helpful. I mean, I think that's the whole idea, well, this is just coming from me, but I think that was my whole idea on this, is that we're looking deeper into a group. Tay is a perfect example, because there's so much we can look at. What services are already being used, what's out there, how can we help with those, what can we recommend, even recommending for the gap analysis. So there seems like there's a lot there, and I agree we should separate out Tay. It was clearly that got the most little stickers next to it. So it clearly was the real hot button issue, one of the two for the board. Yeah.
Again, in thinking of what we can do, I mean, I also think that knowing the service area, I remember when Tay Tunnel came here to present, or maybe it was to our committees, but they presented and they kept speaking that they served the whole county, but really after digging down a little bit, they did not. They really only served the city of Ventura and Oxnard, and they didn't have any services available in the East County at all. And didn't really have any way to go forward to offer those services. And so I think it's really important that we look at these CBOs, because a lot of them say, yes, we're available to the whole county, but in fact, they don't have the capacity or the transportation or all of the things to do that. AIDS Place is another place that does really incredible work, but they are in Oxnard, and that's the area that they serve, and they are unable to serve East County. So I think we really, that would be one thing that we could look at the CBOs that are serving this population and make sure that they're available countywide, because we have Tay needs countywide.
No, absolutely, and I would just say that, you know, every contractor, every CBO has a scope of work with the department, and they're funded for that scope of work. And if the scope of work is, you know, Oxnard and, you know, parts of Ventura, if you want additional presence in the East Valley, then the funding has to follow the scope of work. So I would just remind you that right now, there's no funding. We don't have funding for anything, pretty much. So when we come up with a lot of these suggestions, we have to be aware, cognizant, well, if we're gonna do this, where's that money gonna come from?
I absolutely understand that, but it also helps to know that they're not being served. That it could be that in the scope of work, that it serves the whole county, and so we think we're serving the whole county when in fact we are not. And so, no, there may not be any more money, but we may need to spread the money that we have a little thinner.
Yep.
Sure, and that's our purpose to give advice. Yeah.
Exactly, and as Diane said, I think we don't have to finish this in a particular timeline. We have a goal, we want to meet the goal, and if it takes 10 months, that's okay. It can go into our next fiscal year. We're not on some kind of a deadline here, it may be nice, but it doesn't have to. So I think we can just be aware of that too. James?
So I want to come with a little bit more of a layman's perspective. This is least, I'm probably the least informed as far as K and CBOs. I don't even know what a CBO is.
Community-based
Community-based, okay. So I would recommend, I mean, your answer to part of the issue is right in your very last note is that you reach out to nonprofits and organizations that are working in the space to find out where your gaps are and educate us. And then when we get our numbers back from the study, now we're more informed. I mean, I see that as having value because it helps me understand where we're coming from. And then by the time that study gets to us, we have some more answers. That's kind of where I kind of see it differently because I know less about it. I want to know more. You're very well educated in this area, but I don't feel so educated. You guys are teaching, you all are speaking a completely different language. Talk about veterans. We're good.
You can teach us.
Well, they could be part of a K discussion though, if you think about it, because young veterans coming out of the service, they meet that age requirement. So it really, I think, overlaps very well with that. You might be the expert, you don't think?
I think it does too. I don't know if the microphone's working. From standpoint, we have a large naval base here as well, and you have children service members as well. There is an education process that needs to happen for me, but I do see value in. If this is our goal, then let's get some people in here to tell us what's going on. And I'll tell you from the nonprofit space, from my perspective, is my nonprofit is filling the gap. So I can educate you on where the shortfalls are, my expertise, and that's where this organization is bring strength.
Okay, so, you say a comment? No, I just said, everyone has had great comments. Oh, good.
I think county council's mic is on. She turns that on and we'll get that listen.
Thank you. Okay. Right, so this is what I'm hearing on this particular one, that K would be a goal, one of the goals we would work on. Is that, am I hearing kind of what people are feeling?
Yeah.
Okay, so put that over here, because we are gonna vote eventually, and the other large area, well, we don't want it to be this large, but an area that we want to focus on according to the discussion and what we did last month are justice issues, service involved adults and children. Now, I wrote down some of what was brought up and got interest from several people that were here. This again would need to be narrowed down, I would assume, into something that is more manageable, like when you see the Tay population, you kind of get what that is and how we can work with that. This is broader, so I think if people are interested in making the justice issues another goal, we don't have to, but if we're interested, and there were quite a few people interested in this, we need to probably look at it in terms of exactly how we're gonna narrow that down, so that we really do have something we can go deeper into with the goal of making a recommendation.
Sure.
Yeah, Diane.
If it helps anyone, I actually have the pictures of the things I was writing on. And the one that really got a lot of dots to narrow it down was response time and collaboration with law enforcement, including transportation, crisis team, and law enforcement. Yeah, that's that. We also had broadened paths for hold, step downs for hold that kind of fall in there, and there was justice involved, adults and children. But the one that really got the dots were the response time and collaboration. If that helps.
Any comments on that?
I think that could be a goal on itself. I mean, part of the larger picture, but that's huge.
We don't have to do more than one goal, but if there was a second, this would possibly be it because of people's interest the last meeting. So any other comments?
Cheryl, that was my suggestion. I think it's very important topic to work on. We can collaborate with police and the crisis team. I'm sure that even at, the emergency rooms will appreciate a better collaboration on getting people into the proper space for full evaluation. I know there's huge gaps in service in there and response time with the crisis team, and sometimes nobody gets out there. And anything can happen during that period. If somebody's not out there to evaluate in a timely manner, you never know. Police are now involved and something bad can happen. I think it's a serious topic that we should look at.
So I'm gonna jump in. Yeah, so you all know we're undergoing an extreme system transformation, which includes that with SB 43 and all of the other work. So I would just say, I would go back to the beginning of what your mandate is as a BHAB member. And back to what Teresa Comstock advised as far as what your roles are and what the WIC code defines as far as what you're responsible for doing. And then also, I would caution you to remember what our mandate is within the behavioral health department as far as specialty behavioral health services. So regardless of if you're looking at TAE or the justice issues, remembering especially post Prop 1 and what the mandate is changing to as far as us really focusing in on those specialty services and what our responsibility is, and looking at what's actually going to be helpful and useful moving forward. And that includes looking at the funding and where the money is going. I would also say, if you're gonna tackle an issue as far as like number 3, that there are many, many hands involved in that beyond what the department does. When you're looking at response time, when you're looking at holds written in hospitals, when you're looking at who can make or break a hold, that is not the sole responsibility of the department. So unless you're gonna bring to the table every single emergency department at every single hospital and start the conversations about LPS designation at more than 2 hospitals in the county, you might run the risk of running into circles and really not accomplishing anything. So I would get very specific as to what your goal actually is regarding both TAE and justice, because there are many hands that touch some of these areas that we in the department are one piece of. I appreciate your point. I appreciate you pointing that out, Dr. Jenner, but we're aware of that. I'm aware of that. And so when we do a work group, we have board members, but we invite members from the community. So we've got Mark Stadler and Scott Walker and Sean right here. There are a lot of folks that are already tapping into us. We can invite other people from the medical field and from the IPU or from the ER, all of that. And I think that it would be a much more robust work group. I think we would want to include the players.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, before you get to that point, you want to have, what we talked about with SMART goals. They want to be specific. They want to be measurable. They want to be actionable. Because these are very broad topics across the board. And I know we're not going to get there today, but just saying, I want to talk about number 3. Every single piece of number 3 could be an individual goal.
Right.
So what in number 3 do you actually want to tackle? Like, what is your ultimate thing you want to accomplish?
Right.
I want to reduce response times. I want to increase the amount of transfers. Like, what is it we're actually trying to do? Because if not, you're going to sit for months and months and not really actually achieve what it is you think you want. So that's all. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Sure.
Are we supposed to, are you planning on voting on something today on this? I feel like we are not prepared to do that. Like, especially with Dr. Jenner's comment and what we just talked about, because because something's difficult and there's a lot of hands in the pot, it's an important topic. And if, honing down on specifically what we're trying to achieve needs more conversation, then I think we need to do that. That's just my opinion.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead. Nancy and then Janice.
I may be incorrect in thinking this, but I thought that, you wanted to possibly vote on maybe not minutia, maybe not the weeds of how we're going to get to where we're gonna get. And along with Dr. Dennering's comments, how we may achieve this goal, but you were just wanted to identify if we were in agreement of having these goals, and then we work out the details later and have further conversations. Is that correct? Or could you explain, give us some clarity?
Okay, well, let me call Nancy first. Okay. Oh.
lost track. In terms of the justice issues, it would be my recommendation, I think, if we were trying to narrow things down and we really need to do that. And there, like you say, there's, for instance, number 3, under the justice issues, if we just looked at crisis team and law enforcement, we'd be looking at behavioral health and, the involvement of public safety, that whole issue of crisis. Crisis is big on everybody's list. Everywhere you read about it, people want to know how is this working? How are we helping our folks? So I think we could look at that and just limit it to that. And maybe we would find, well, certainly we would find a lot of interesting information. I was gonna say more, that's. Okay, did you want to respond again or not?
I'm so sorry. I was having to, I'm sorry, I was. Can't talk. It's not working.
It's not working.
I apologize. I was having a sidebar. I shouldn't have been talking to, I think, was that question directed at me?
No,
Not necessarily, I thought you were signaling that you wanted to say something,
Oh,
so
no,
that would have been
sorry,
my
Cheryl.
misinterpretation.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, okay, James?
I'll say it though, we were just having a sidebar regarding the county, Mark Stadler, if you're listening. They have a monthly or quarterly stakeholder meeting, so I was just recommending to her, maybe she should get to a stakeholder meeting. I try to go now as a retired law enforcement officer, but a nonprofit stakeholder, so I do attend those quarterly as well, so. As it relates to hold times and behavioral health, I've written hundreds of applications for holds, and I'm well aware of the issues that go on with this transition from the street to the hospital to back on the street usually. This would be a good opportunity for those that know Mark Stadler, or if you want to reach out to me, maybe I could connect you somehow to get better informed on that issue. So we also have Sean Pusey here, and I'll throw him under the bus.
Again, I don't know if Mark's listening, but some of this data he actually may have, because it would be difficult for me to gather that for other law enforcement agencies, but Mark's on there now, so I'll let Mark talk.
Yeah. Mark? Do you?
Yeah, I'm here. I hear the conversation. But yeah, obviously we have our quarterly meetings where we work with all the stakeholders, and if that's a good starting point to meet with everybody and get discussions going, that's great with me.
When are those meetings, Mark?
Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Thank you.
When do you meet?
The question was, when do you meet?
Is he muted?
Maybe you're not hearing us, or?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. When do you have your quarterly stakeholder meetings?
Ironically, it was supposed to be last week and I canceled it because I got evacuated during the fire. So I'm probably going to be rescheduling for probably mid-December, mid-January at the latest.
Okay, great. So should we reach out to you if we want to get added to your email distribution invite?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so back to the goals, yes. What else? Not working. Technical problems here. Sorry.
May I make a recommendation
Yes.
on the note of this conversation?
Your
If
mind,
the-
is your mind working?
I can speak loudly. Can you hear me back there?
Yes.
If the BHAB has interest as a collective for information, perhaps we can have a person go under the BHAB umbrella and report back. I know there's interest, but this way there's not 20 of us all trying to go to one meeting, and we can maybe just report back, maybe an idea. Obviously, if you have an individual interest as a nonprofit or a county employee, then that's on you. Then as a BHAB representative, maybe we could attend a body as a stakeholder rather than 20 folks.
Okay, we're getting a little bit away from the goals, so I'm gonna bring us back a little bit, so. Maybe we start with one, we get through one and then we can move to the other. So is there interest in looking specifically at the Tay population and coming up with a goal for that population on that will result in recommendations to the department and information as well as possibly to the board of supervisors? And again, we don't have all the answers. That's the whole idea here, is that we're gonna go out and develop from the committee whatever and the committee's gonna make the goals much more refined for sure, because we have to really narrow it. That's what I keep saying, we just gotta keep narrowing it down, digging deeper, so that we can get to what we really wanna know. But that is partly gonna be up to the committee. So what we really just want to identify, and if we don't have enough information today, we can certainly postpone until the next meeting. But I think the idea is just to identify the overreaching goal, the issue for that goal, the subject matter, and then let the committee, and hopefully we are gonna all participate, we have to all participate in one of these committees, come back with more refined goal for the year, or for whatever the amount of time it's gonna be. Does that make it clearer, or, yeah, okay, all right, so right now we're talking about two things. We know Tay was the most popular, I shouldn't say, I hate to say it like that, but it was the issue that more people were interested in, and then criminal justice issues, and I don't think we've narrowed that down particularly. And we might want to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, Tay is kind of its own, in a way, it's easier, I think, to understand. Maybe the criminal justice isn't. I mean, I heard a lot during the discussion last month about step downs from holds or what happens when people are released from the criminal justice system, whatever it is. And I know there was an article, I think, in the paper recently about some program that's going on with that. That was, I think, a big part of it. And then the crisis team and transportation, getting to wherever they need to go, etc. So, if that's not yet clear enough, or people still have an interest in that, that's fine. We can start with one goal, which may evolve into another goal from the same category, but we have to, it's helpful if we can move on in deciding. Marty, did you want to say something? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we were cutting out your own side, and I started to know Michael. So I'm not sure exactly what the perceived issue is with regard to holds, but holds are not a criminal process. So they really aren't part of criminal justice. So holds are designed to get someone evaluated and if necessary into involuntary treatment. But they are in no way, shape or form criminal.
And what I'm seeing is the justice and also those who are, I think, whether it's in the civil LPS conservatorship realm or criminal justice, where unfortunately we see two cycling in and out. And like for me, when I was one of the ones who was a big proponent on the discharge planning, both from the hospitals and from the jails. Because that's where I see huge gaps, across the board, so, but Marty is right, there, you know, we have the two different things. And the reason why we're involved with both of these, because we typically don't do much civil, is that someone's liberty interest is at stake. It's a lot of hospitalization, so.
Okay, well, the people who talked about the justice issues last time, I mean, you just brought up discharge planning, which I think, I don't know, which I think was discussed last time, but if those of you who were involved in that discussion are certainly put up your little dots, maybe you can speak up and explain more what you was thinking, because I'm just going from the notes that Diane took, that's how I got here. And so it may not be clarified enough.
I just want to quickly second or third, they're saying as well, as you were talking, I was thinking, this is not 5150 hold, is actually an application for a hold for the person to be evaluated.
Right.
And it's not an arrest, it's not a criminal justice, we're taking up to jail, and that's definitely. So my recommendation would be if Jennifer, if you're the person, to bifurcate that further and say, well, we're talking about, what is it called, like veterans court is a deferment, you know, taking it out. We're talking about criminal justice, deferment for sentencing and treatment, or are you talking about diversion? Yeah, diversion, the legal terminology is really leaving me. Or are you talking about that side of the medical aspect of it, psychological?
I think I'll clear this up. What I was referring to was when somebody calls and wants their loved one evaluated for a 5150, there are a few options. You can call a crisis team, or you can call 911. Or you can call BCBH and see if you can get the case manager out there, because I've seen all three happen. Often what happens, they'll call the crisis team, there's a 6-hour hold time. Nobody gets out there, then by the time they do get out there, the person's gone. Or something violent has happened and they've been arrested, or the situation is just can drastically go one way or the other. Now, I don't know if this is an actual topic for the BHAB. I mean, it feels like we can make some recommendations and bring all the different, you know, departments together to talk about it. And now knowing that there is a quarterly meeting on that, I personally have gone through the CIT training with Shane Matthews, but I really feel like at the, where I serve on my nonprofit at the Candela Group, often this is a big source of contention with people that can't get the help they need. They can't get to the ER, they can't get the crisis team out, and things go haywire. So I feel like this is an important topic, and that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yes, and I don't think anyone would disagree with you. I think my point to help this move along is what is the goal you're trying to accomplish, aside from the very real and obvious thing we know is that there's a capacity issue. So, you know, we know that there are many more people out with needs than we're able to respond to. And I mean, we as a system, right? So if we had the available number of staff to respond to every single call, we would put them out there. Reality is we have the workforce shortage across the country, especially in California, where we're really just strapped tight and have to prioritize response. That's not a great answer. That's not an answer anybody likes, but that's the reality. And so I think, how can we work with the limitations we have? Sure, we can have that conversation, but I think for the BHAB, aside from the very obvious known facts that we as a department and the state are trying to work on as far as having increased response and what that can look like, what specific goal are we trying to accomplish? That's what I'm saying, is that's where I don't want you all to get stuck, because if it was a matter of we just had positions that we were not filling, or we had money that we just weren't spending, that would be something that, you know, say, hey, why aren't you guys doing this department? That's not the reality. The reality is we're constantly recruiting and we have funding and we're looking at various ways to meet those gaps. So that's not, I mean, a recommendation is great, but that we're already doing that. So aside from that, what else are you trying to accomplish? I think that's what the chair is trying to get at. That was within the BHAB's purview.
So I hearing you say that my efforts or some of our efforts would be better spent advocating for this type of collaboration outside of the BHAB?
No, I'm saying, is it tied to a goal that the BHAB is trying to accomplish? I think that's what we're all trying to get at right now, because that kind of collaboration and conversation is absolutely necessary. So what's the ultimate goal?
To decrease wait times and get the crisis team out there or and transportation to the appropriate place. That would be the goal, to get people to the hospital or the CSU or something like that. I mean, it's up to all of us. I mean, I feel like it's a very important topic, but you know, I'm ready to pioneer outside the BHAB if I need to, so you know, as a team, we can all decide what we want to.
Okay, well, I think, yes, thank you for interjecting that, because we do want to have goals that seem like something we can get to, and that may be a great goal, and we may be able to get there with a solid recommendation, but I think we do want to keep in mind that we want to work on something that really has, and it's not gonna be a perfect answer, absolutely, and it may not even accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, because we may find out we can't because of funding or whatever, but I think we just want to narrow it down enough that we can at least look in depth at something and say, we want to go into this, and maybe it could be that. We want to go into this deeper, we want to see where the gaps are, their recommendations, are other counties doing something different? You know, what are the CBOs doing? Maybe they're not doing anything with this, but there's different ways to approach this and try to get somewhere, but the goal, the overriding goal is what's important. She's stating it correctly for me, thank you. Okay, so if we're not ready to do that, that's okay. We can just look at one right now and come back and do another. We don't have to do more than one for the whole year. But this has to be something that you all as members are willing to work on in a committee. That you're willing to take on in an ad hoc committee, which you're going to meet and have this goal before you and then work to meet it. Whatever you have to do.
Sure. Yep. I also wanted to make a comment, and that is that these committees will be available on the internet. I mean, we'll be able to do Zoom meetings, so we don't have to meet in person. James, to attend these meetings. So just wanted to mention that.
It would seem to me that with the interest in TAG, that a committee could work on what's out there. What does the county offer, county services, and are they going to be able to offer when that becomes available? What do the school systems offer, both those that go through the Ventura County Office of Ed and those that have their own, you know, rest, what do they call them, wellness centers? What do the CBOs and nonprofits offer for this group? Some of which they have gotten funding in the past from behavioral health, and say, you know, is there a reasonable distribution from need to and geography? And that's, then we can say yes, no, or here's what we saw is not working. Does that make sense?
Other comments?
I just want to piggyback on Jennifer, because I think Jennifer, I'm on the same page. I don't mean to speak for you, but so having done a lot of different work groups with this board, essentially we have to realize that initially whatever work is going to be undertaken by that committee is going to be a bit of a fact-finding mission, and there's some due diligence involved in getting to what exactly it is you want to then discuss and break down and fine-tune and turn around and potentially make a report or recommendation. So if we have to cull the justice issue goal, I would just want to make it response time and transportation. And we need to find out what actually it looks like today and why it is that way. And then using existing staffing and resources, is there a way to fine tune that and make a recommendation? And if not, make a recommendation to do some work to find out the additional funding or personnel or staffing that might be needed and put that into a report. Nothing is, set in stone, but I think that there's a way to get this to the forefront. This is something that's very well known in the community. This is not a new thing. It's gotten better over time, but there's still need for improvement. When you have a 6-hour gap, when you call for a CIT officer, for whatever reason, it creates a situation that just escalates and gets to a potential lethal situation. And then some of the problems that we're experiencing is that we've got crisis team folks coming out on the scene and police there, and then everybody, the crisis team leaves, and then who's transporting the individual to the ER? So let's find out what actually is going on right now. What does that look like? And then from there, make some recommendations after we do a fact-finding trip. That's how you start this stuff. As far as the TAG, there's a lot of different things you have here, a lot of different bullet points. I recommend narrowing it down. I think Nancy's autism and developmental disability issue has been brought up for years. I mean, I've been doing this since 2008. That is an ongoing issue in this community, and that population is not being served well enough. They're being served, through tri-counties, but there's a tremendous lack there. And we want to help families that keep coming to us under public comments, both written and passionate verbal explanations, and see if we can be more responsive and taking a look, taking a deep dive, doing some fact finding, finding out what's really out there. And is there any possible thing that we can recommend that would enhance or mitigate some of the challenges that they're having in receiving services? I think it's, when I see things like schools, Ventura County Office of Ed, CBOs, youth wellness, TAPE, prenatal, it's like, what? These are really general, and I know it's coming from the board, I'm not being critical, but I don't think it helps. I think I would narrow it down from this list. So I'm gonna put a vote in for the autism developmental disability gap. And as far as the first one, I'm gonna put in narrowing it down to response time and transportation. That's my recommendation if you want 2 things to possibly vote on. Those are the things that I see as the priorities from this list.
And I just want to interject again, whatever the board decides to do, I think it's fantastic. What I would also say is, because of the timing with Proposition 1 and with all of the decisions that have to be made with the funding, it's even more critical that if there are areas that are a priority, especially that are currently funded in buckets that are either going to be eliminated or significantly reduced, like core services, which is where all of the crisis response and crisis services are funded by. If that's going to be drastically changed, which it will be, now is the time to really sit and think about what recommendations or what goals and recommendations you can provide the department. That's why I said, Jennifer, what you said is absolutely critical, because this time next year, we will be making decisions for these areas based on what we know our new allocation will be for Proposition 1. And as I stated in August, one of the biggest at-risk areas is crisis services.
Right.
So if you're looking at the model in the way that it is today, I guarantee you it will not look the same way in July of 2026. What that will look like is up for you all to give the department advisement, and then based on what we hear from the community in our integrated planning process. But services will not look the way they do today, a year and a half from now. They will not. So this is the time to really provide that input. And that's why I'm saying, like, being thoughtful in what you're not just looking at current state, but what are we looking at post Prop 1 based on what we can actually afford?
Dr. Jennery,
Yes.
I think for me, what would be helpful if you take a look at our list and just let us know, like, what are you chopping?
Well, I can't do that. I can't do that. And that's what I'm saying is, what I can say is what the community, based on our 3-year plan, because it's not, so again, one of the things that makes Proposition 1 so different from what current state is with MHSA, the department is one piece who gets to say how the funds get used. If you look at the website that I've sent links to, you'll see the stakeholder involvement process is much more broad than it ever has been. That includes the 5 most populous cities. It includes the managed care plan. It includes public health. It includes law enforcement. It includes everyone And so it's not just the department pushing through MHSA projects like we've always done in the last 20 years, dictating how funding gets to get, dished out. So there are many more people at stake, and the slice of the pie is even thinner. And so it's behoove the BHAB to recommend the most critical services, given the limitations that we're gonna have based on what I've presented as far as how the funding is shifting, to prioritize what actually happens in the community, especially now that we have all of this infrastructure we will be responsible for and reductions in core services. And that is just the result of Prop 1 that I have absolutely no power to change, because that is what the voters approved.
Still.
I have a procedural question, if I can ask. And again, this may be in the category of dumb questions, but would it not be possible to divide this up into folks that want to work on pay issues and other folks who work on justice issues? To have an ad hoc meeting or two and then come back in a month with our firm proposal?
I mean, you're saying would it be possible for people to self-identify kind of if they're more interested in crisis, what I'm hearing is crisis services, which would include, I think, what you're talking about, but may even be a little broader than that, and TAY issues. And then meet on your own as committee, ad hoc committee, and come back. Yes?
Yeah, even with the time.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea, but I still think what Dr. Jenner, at least what I'm hearing, is that crisis is not where we need to be spending our time.
That is the opposite of what I'm saying. That is the opposite of what I'm saying. Yeah, no, that is the opposite of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if the BHAB is saying that this is a high priority for us, because we're moving into Prop 1 world where we have to prioritize services based on the new funding allocations. And if the BHAB can put a recommendation to the department and say, you're gonna have to cut a whole bunch of things, but we would really recommend you not cut crisis services in a way you may need to. That helps me, but if I don't get a recommendation based on a goal, I can't, it's gonna be harder for me to maintain that. Because
I understand now, you're saying like, take a look at the list and see what's the most important.
Right.
But in my opinion, crisis services are gonna be even more once Prop 1 goes.
I understand, and that's what we all agree with that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as we've talked about for the last several months, what we all know and agree on is not how the legislation was written and not how the money is being allocated. So that's why the county is going to be faced with making some very tough decisions to maintain certain services that have always previously just been funded in order to maintain what we deem essential and priority.
Would you want to say something first? So I think what Dr. Dinner is also saying is that if we chose under the justice category, response time and transportation, because you mentioned a couple of times, maybe transportation, even though there's no money, or maybe not much money, but whatever. Maybe that would be one of the ways to mitigate the response time as well. I mean, having the CIT officer come out and having transportation be able to, rather than having a police officer having to take the bike to the hospital, whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying those two things, and I think someone else mentioned that also.
That was my recommendation.
So I agree with that. Those two things could be something that we might want to look into. If that's, what the board decides is a critical something that we critically might want to recommend to the department and to the board of supervisors. Those are just two things. And then.
So it sounds, I'm sorry.
No, it's at your dinner.
Okay, let's just stick with right now with crisis services, because I think we just need to get that now done, Nancy.
Comment on that.
Well, I don't know that.
Well, I meant crisis.
This does dovetail into that, but I'm just wondering, I'm confused, and that's probably just me. I did try to read that, all that stuff that we've received, some of it's very dense, and it's still you're wondering, all right, what do we serve with this money and what are we gonna lose? And so I don't have a clear picture of the gains and losses, or the money's gonna go from here to there. So I don't know how we can make, and I think you have a sense of, like if it's PE and I, that's gone or in, or, you know, that kind of thing. That would help us, I think.
So it's all in the August slide deck.
Pardon me?
It's all in that slide deck from August. Yes,
So if we go
it's very
back to that-
specific. It tells you increase this percentage, decrease this percentage, and then it tells you what services are in those categories that are potentially at risk.
Yeah.
All of that is in that PowerPoint deck.
Thank you, because I knew that I had seen some stuff and then I was thinking, how do I look at it? All right. Okay. So, in the interest of time, we are gonna have to move forward in one way or another, so. I think what Dr. Dennery is saying in response to the price of services part of this discussion is that might be really helpful to the department to hear what we're hearing from the community, which is our mandate, to talk about the crisis services that maybe will be cut. And is there something that we would recommend? This is just real simple of this, but is there something that we would recommend we think is vital to be kept if she has to cut, which she will, big time in that particular area? So I think that's kind of where this is going, is, okay, yes, okay. So then that would mean that we would make, I think crisis services is one of our goals in terms of looking at what it can be still available, what we can prioritize as being really important, et cetera, and bring back. So it can be refined more, of course. This is just very general, but it's just to get us going on that. How do people feel about that as a goal and something that they're willing to work on?
Great.
Good, okay, great, lots of thumbs up, okay, awesome, okay. So that would be one way we would go with one ad hoc committee, and we're gonna have to talk more about that clearly, but if we could just get one or two identified today, I think that'll be helpful to move us along a little bit, if we just do one, that's okay. So yeah, James,
Cheryl, do you need a motion for Tay and crisis services to become an ad hoc committee?
I need a motion for them to become the goals. If that's what we want to be the goals, not the committee, I mean, the committee sort of follows the goals, but right now we're just gonna deal with the goals. But yes.
Yeah, we do.
Are these exploratory goals, or this is what we're gonna focus on for 12 months? Because I think I agree with the doctor that kind of still an exploratory phase, and whoever's the initial pioneers, steal a word from Jennifer, for our two topics. We need more information before we make it an annual goal.
Right, and so I would just recommend that that's part and parcel of starting at that would be the first thing the ad hoc committee would do. You would go out, do your research, due diligence, come back, report to your committee members, discuss, figure out what you want to take from that and bring to the larger board, get some additional marching orders, and then go back to the group. It's all part and parcel with developing a final recommendation.
In the interest of time, I would make the motion that we make Tay and crisis services initial focus for the ad hoc committee.
Two committees.
Two committees.
Well, I think you want,
Tay being separate from.
I think you want work groups so that we can do this virtually. You don't want to call it
Okay, I
committees.
amend my motion. to-
They're ad hoc committees, they're ad hoc
Tay
committees.
work group.
Yeah.
one.
Ad hoc committees, the same thing as work groups, so
That's
just one
what I-
idea.
Okay, but
So in the interest of time, I'd like to make the motion for that to be done.
Second.
Okay. Does everyone understand what we're voting on? CJ?
Yeah.
This is an action item, so we will need to do a roll call vote. Can someone make the motion? Yeah, the motion is that, would you want to restate it yourself since you made it?
Yes, I'll make a motion for one Tay subcommittee. What is it called? An ad hoc committee.
You don't need to worry about the committee, we're just.
And
we're
crisis,
goals.
and one crisis response work group / ad hoc committee be formed.
Okay, those would be the two goals.
Okay, you're gonna second it.
Yeah,
And then I will
it's a
I'll second this restatement.
Okay, CJ?
Soledad O'Brien.
Soledad?
Yes.
Andre. Overall.
Yes.
That's okay. Nancy Martin.
Yes.
Jeffrey Allen Diggs,
Yes.
Janice Gardner,
Yes.
I say yes, CJ. Naomi,
Yes.
Diane McKay,
Yes.
Jennifer Morrison,
Yes.
and Sean has left the room. Mike has left. Liz Warren
Yes.
and Cheryl Hyman. Correct.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay, that passes. We have our two overriding goals. And we know that people are interested and enthusiastic about working on those goals, right? So we really need then you to really seriously think about which one, or you can do both, I wouldn't deny that to anyone. That you're willing to really put some hard work into the investigation stage, you know, coming up with whatever we can, et cetera, and will require a lot of work and et cetera. So at this point, we know those are our goals, we know which direction we're going in. And please just think about the committee that you're willing to be a part of. We will need to get a couple chairs of those committees, so if somebody's thinking about a committee and they know that's an ad hoc committee and they know that's what they would like to chair, then please let me know. Yes, Janice. Sure.
I just wanted to address what Andre had mentioned. So once we start these work groups, RG work groups, that we do meet and then we do discuss amongst ourselves exactly what you were saying. We narrow down, we talk about, you know, what we're gonna research, what we wanna establish, and eventually have a recommendation and have with the idea of eventually having recommendations that goes to the department. So.
Can I just add on to that?
Yeah, you have.
Just the two that are at the bottom of the page that look at what is funded that will change after Prop 1 and engage the public more, including the base, churches, nonprofits, schools, CEOs, veterans, et cetera.
CJ.
Oh, CJ. Okay. I have a question. As you recall, we did have a standing K committee. And it sort of died for lack of leadership. So does that mean that we will eventually resurrect that committee, or is completely different?
This would be a completely different committee. Because the structure, that was a standing committee, which we are not having those right now, so this would be an ad hoc committee with a very specific goal. It's the same thing. Yeah,
I know, but we use, I understand that, Cheryl, but because we use our vernacular, we use work groups, so people don't get confused with committee, because we have had standing committees.
Yes.
So if you don't want to use, you know, if you don't want to use.
They're off again.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, that's fine, it's your prerogative as chair, but to make it consistent, we want to call them work groups, that's how we've always worked.
That way we know they're not grounded.
We know that they're not standing committees, they don't have to meet in person, they can meet virtually.
Okay. So, now, is it my understanding, from our attorney, that we can't vote to have the actual ad hoc committees today? We know what we're gonna do, we know the direction, but do we have to establish them, do we have to actually go? It's on the.
So
What's on the agenda? Yes.
We can't hear you, Cheryl, we can't hear you.
It's not working. Oh, they are doing.
Yes.
Okay, they are working.
There we go.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest, we actually have a template form from this council who came for about how to set up a structure for an ad hoc committee, work group, whatever you want to call it. As long as you get the words ad hoc in there, we're good. Because that's what they use in the government codes, and we want to make it clear that we're working under that provision of the government code for ad hoc group, if you will. So it's just like a one-page form, and it gives sort of a structure. This is what the goals are. This is what, you know, this is approximately how long we think it's going to last. And that we could get those prepared and put into the packet for next month. That would give you a concrete thing to discuss, tweet, and then vote on it. And then we know when the groups start And we can show that they're starting, that they have a particular task to do. Okay, does that make sense?
And I will just add also, thank you for the legal opinion, also for the department's sake for Prop 1 implementation and for our community outreach, including this board, having something written that we can submit as part of our integrated plan as far as the BHAB's position or recommendations, having something actually in a formal report format is very helpful because that would go in with our submission to the state as far as our integrated plan on the record.
What's the timeline on that?
This is for the plan that will need to be approved by June 30, 2026.
Oh, okay.
So any work that the BHAB does leading up to that would be included in that 18-month transition plan.
Okay. Okay, so if we were to prepare, fill out the form that Marty has told us about, which everybody should have, I think it was probably in the packet that Teresa gave us, but if not, it's on their website. Are there people who'd like to work on that, or, so is that okay? People just, okay, so.
If you wanna send it, do you wanna send out the link?
It's,
People don't have to, right?
okay, it's in the packet that.
I'll make sure.
If someone.
Okay, we can do that. It's only.
Yeah,
It'll do that.
yeah, it's three hole punch, it's back to back, you can't, they're not usable, it's just, they're just samples.
Right, okay, so we will, so are there people who would like to work on, sort of getting that, or we can do it as an executive committee, I guess, maybe that would be easier. Yeah, they're okay with the executive committee?
That's fine.
Okay, we'll do that.
Not as, no, as. But.
What I just asked the chair is if we could get an idea of your interest in one and the other, so we can see if we have some sort of balance.
It's not right now.
Yeah, it's not a vote, it's just an idea of which one you're interested in working on.
Why don't you take the vote on it?
Jennifer, I'm gonna take a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and say what you like.
Crisis.
Crisis. Tay.
I'm Tay.
I'm actually interested in both, but, so.
Total both. Okay, no, I'm sorry, crisis.
Tay.
Crisis.
Crisis.
Say.
Crisis.
It seems, I mean, there's people busy, but it seems fairly even, which is what I just wanted to make sure we had some balanced interest.
Good idea. Go ahead, Janice.
Oh, I was just gonna say, could we just do a show of hands so that we can see the numbers, or, I mean, or did you?
I count.
Oh, you counted back?
664, and then you're interested in.
Okay,
So
okay, perfect.
I think there's 5 with Tay. 7 with crisis.
I counted 6-4, but you could be right.
Well, I don't know, I'm just writing down names, but.
6-4.
Maybe I missed something, I don't know.
Anyway, all right. Okay, well, good. Yeah, I have missing a couple of results, and we're missing people.
So, I know we kind of we're gonna go through the procedural stuff at executive meeting probably. So just want to say this, in the 18 months I've been coming, probably the most exciting and most productive meeting I've been a part of, not because for lack of trying in the past, but because we have a meaningful opportunity to interject for the coming problem with changes. So I'm excited that it's split right now. I'm excited that we've narrowed it down. Dr. Dennery, and I appreciate your very passionate explanation about what the heck is going on. It's very confusing for us, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for telling us the same thing and we don't get it.
Yeah, thank you, and you missed the last meeting, but it was equally as energetically, people were involved, and it was also very productive. So we're moving along, I think, in the right direction, and we do have some time here. She, like Dr. Denner was saying, we have a good year here, so we don't have to go by the fiscal year. I mean, if we can, that's great, but I don't think we have to feel bound by that because this may take longer. Okay, I'm gonna move on the agenda. Is there anything else because we need to move on because of time? I don't want to break my record here. So. Okay, so we did a poll that many of you had asked for about the time of our meeting. And as I think I mentioned last time, we have to stick with Mondays because this particular room is quite booked up. So we are having to stick with Mondays at this point, but the time can be more flexible. And actually, it's interesting, the 2 o'clock hour had the most votes. So we're switching from 1 to 2. That does allow people to have lunch meetings, which I know was one of the complaints we heard, but also people who live far east will be able to hopefully miss traffic and still have a little more time. So that doesn't start until January.
Okay.
So that will not be next month at all, but it will be starting in January. And I should note, just because I'm talking about scheduling, January and February, Mondays are where all the holidays are. So we're gonna run into this again in January and February. So apparently what's happened before, Jackie was telling me, was we just go to the 4th Monday on those particular months.
Right.
So you can already know that that's gonna be coming up. We will send a notice out, but that's how that's gonna work, just to get us through that time. Now, then I did put the December BHAB meeting on here. It is December the 18th?
16th.
16th? Okay, thanks. December 16th. Again, in terms of quorum, it's getting close to the holiday. Some people were dark in December. There's different ways to do this. We could have possibly, I don't know, that one, we won't have voted yet. I was gonna say we could do ad hoc committees, but we won't actually have voted those yet. So, I just wanna know if people really are committed to being here at that time, or do they feel like they're just not because of the holiday, because of the, schools are gonna be, they're not out yet, I guess, but.
What's the question?
About this meeting in December, originally we're just gonna cancel, but because we have all this going on, I just wanna see what the interest is in being here.
For me, it's the 16th, I think. Yeah, it's not here. I don't know about anyone else, but the 16th is not near enough any of the holidays to affect myself. I don't know about other people or people that have children.
I'm just trying to get a feel for the board. Do you wanna be as a board in December?
Yes.
Maybe if we, when we meet to set the agenda, we can set the agenda to hone down and vote on these ad hoc committees. And so that in January, we can start off with them and get some work done. And, they structure how we're going to work.
Yeah, I think barring any other issues that come up that we need to be aware of or talk about, we could just really gear the meeting towards that and make it probably a shorter meeting and more efficient, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, all right, well, I'll do that and hopefully we'll get a quorum. I don't want to drag people out if we're not gonna get a quorum, so that would be the main thing. Okay, so we will be in December. The executive committee will also meet at our regular time in December. We put together some of this for our meeting in our general meeting. Okay.
And I'll be in touch.
Yes, and she'll be in touch. Okay, and that's great. Okay. Just a couple other agenda items. I'm sorry.
Has the exec committee time changed?
It did start. It did change.
To what?
To 2:30. Okay.
2:30, they did.
Yeah. Okay, so, we already talked about the announcement, which is the 30-day posting and the public review. I think that was something that you already touched on, right? No, it's a different one. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh. Oh, Courtney, I'm sorry. Okay, got it.
No apologies. Thank you. I just wanted to do a quick announcement that that we are opening the 30-day posting and public review for the Veterans Mentorship Project Innovation Project. And it begins today, and feedback can be sent to the email address mhsa@ventura.org through December 16th, 2024. A public hearing will be held at the next BHAB meeting, and that's my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Janice, is there something?
Was that in anyone's notes? What this is, I'm sorry, did I miss this? The veterans?
No.
No?
No, so this is just the announcement that it's open for public comment.
So we don't have it, not what's the
You
site.
go to the website, so we're following the policy and the procedures for Teresa Comstock, where we just give the announcement, refer folks to the website, you're able to review it, you will bring it back to public hearing, and that's where any questions come up, that's the time to ask the questions.
What is it called?
It's an innovations project, this is regular innovations work, so it's just on the website.
It's the veteran mentorship project.
Oh, it's in here?
Yeah.
That's what I asked. Okay, never mind.
So then the drop dead date on this period for them to get feedback is what? What's the end of the period?
So December 16th is the date by which public comment should be submitted, and they should be sent to the MHSA@ventura.org email. And then we will be bringing those public comments to the next BHAB. So whatever comments we receive, we'll bring those to the December BHAB meeting. And if the BHAB does not meet in December, then it would be in January.
Great, thank you. Okay, the presentation request, recognition award recommendations.
I had a presentation request that I believe I had meant for Little Guppies. I don't know if you remember that. A gentleman named Kevin. He takes youth out fishing and teaches them how to fish. And I met him on a veteran trip, so I can refresh, but I believe the organization is called Little Guppies.
Okay,
He's willing to present to us.
okay, and are these kids, there's a reason that he works specifically with a group of kids, or?
They're like at-risk youth, I don't know exactly all the check boxes that it would meet, but it's at-risk kind of community youth in the Oxnard, Ventura County area.
Okay. Then we have the contracts, does anyone have any comments on any of the contracts? Seeing or hearing none? Okay, any other public comments? Not seeing anything on the screen. Okay, I don't think there are any public comments. If there are, yell out. Otherwise, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Well, I came to a colorful meeting.
Yeah.